Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the Totally Super Awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised it has been exposed to radiation and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered GammaCast.
Hello and welcome once again to the GammaCast. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend...
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. So good to have you. So, tonight's episode is Jake. Not Jake from State Farm, Jake from the rodeo. Original air date, November 2nd. Oh, hey, it's right here in November, just like us. 1979. David, working as a Band-Aid and aspirin man at a Gaston rodeo, an over-the-hill and ailing rodeo star called Jake wants to win one last prize, enabling him to pay off his younger brother's debts. Directed by Frank Orsatti, written by Kenneth Johnson and Chuck Bowman. This was, it's interesting to me because this is one of these episodes where, to me, there wasn't that much strength to it, but then it did like one or two things where I said, oh, that was really great. The Jack McGee moment, our one Jack McGee moment in this was really kind of was an attempt at redeeming the Jack McGee character, I felt. I wish we had more, but it really worked out nicely. But we'll get to that in a minute. What did you think of the overall arc of the story there, Mozz?
I think it's one of those episodes that just gives you everything you want in an episode like this, knowing the show that it is. Something a nice simple story wraps up, makes you feel good, but I thought the acting was really good on all accounts, so I think that made it a little bit more interesting of an episode, and you get really fun Hulk moments. Oh yeah,
the Hulk really. There's a lot of fun for Lou in this episode. I'm sure Lou enjoyed himself, or maybe not, because it was probably a lot of work doing all these wacky scenes. But there were some pretty good scenes, and the acting was good. And you can actually tell this in this because we've got more than a few people in this episode, who actually were in previous episodes or will come back for other episodes. Maggie is Sandra Carnes, who is most famous to 80s fans from Charles in Charge.
Ah.
Yeah, I believe she was Ellen Powell. She was the mom on Charles in Charge from 1987 until Wow, who knew that Charles in Charge ran for from 1987? Oh, that's actually only 3 years, but I didn't realize it was still on in the 90s. She was also in Chud 2, Bud the Chud from 1989. But here she is of course Maggie here, and she comes back in 1981 in The Incredible Hulk and the Two Godmothers as Sandra. We also have Fred Ward, who is our sort of, I believe he is the lead villain Marvin. Unless it's Buford. I can't remember who was the actual... Who was the main villain. But Fred Ward had previously been with us in... this man has a lot of credits here.
Yeah, he was a sitcom dad, too, wasn't he, at some point?
Well, he actually played Remo Williams in Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins. One of my all-time favorite films. He was one of Lynch's henchmen in The Disciple. Did you ever see Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins?
No.
Oh, okay. I think it's on Netflix. You should watch Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins. It is honestly, it's got Wilford Brimley as basically the world's greatest tough guy.
Really?
Yeah, the Emperor Smith. He is fantastic, and it's a lot of camp, but it is really fun. And then, as I said, I believe Richard Fullerton was in a previous episode. Let me just pull down him. He's on Little House, Misadventures of Sheriff. No, actually, he was only in this one. And then, actually, I think it was it Jesse Vent was in another episode? Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, these are real good actors, and you see it when you pull up their IMDb's, and it's just like, you know, it goes on for days. But this was a really. I mean, this was a good episode in a lot of ways. It's one of those episodes where, to me, I'm not sure you need a Hulk, but it was a nice story. It was a real nice story. Okay, so getting back to the actual episode. So, you know, we open up, we've got, Jake, who is our title character here, riding a Bronco. We get the establishment that he is, you know, one of the all-around great rodeo stars. He is currently competing to be all-around best cowboy of the year. And if he does win the all-around cowboy award, he will receive $100,000, as luck would have it, which will finance his getting an additional truck, so he has at least 2 trucks to build out a trucking fleet for animal transport.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, classic cowboying. If you you don't see well, of course, maybe it's because I don't live in the Midwest anymore, but I don't see. I remember as a kid, I used to see those cattle cars, you know, pulled by semis all the time.
Yeah.
I still see them from time to time. You know, a pig truck, a cow truck, whatever. But not as much as I used to. But maybe it's because I don't live in the same area and I used to. And back in the Midwest, you know, we got a lot of cows going out. We got a lot of pigs coming in. I'm not sure, but okay. That is our goal for our hero, Jake. And but unfortunately, Jake has a no account little brother who grew up in his shadow. And he's got a problem. What's his problem? Mozz?
Well, he's got a gambling problem, a bit of a gambling problem.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think he's very bright, because it seems like these guys in the camp, our anti-heroes in the camp, they sort of keep hustling him, and he keeps owing them more and more money. And then the scene cuts in where he puts his cards down, the head villain. And he's got a full house, and it's like, I get the feeling that happens quite often.
Oh yeah, well, no, I fully expect, that they're, well, you know, here's what I'll tell you. It might not even be that they're cheating him. He just might not be that good at gambling. It is one of those tragic realities of compulsive gamblers that they're often not good at their compulsion. You know.
Right.
You know, the reason why these things become problems is because you're not good at it, you know.
Right. That's true.
You know, there are people that can drink every day, and no one says, "Oh, look at that hopeless drunk." They say, "Oh, look at that witty bon vivant," you know. But the guy who doesn't become a witty bon vivant when he drinks, he's got a problem. And the guy who's not good at gambling but keeps on doing it, he's got a problem. So, so Leon, poor Leon, who is a rodeo clown.
Right.
And, you know, man, I tell you, rodeo clowns in the 1970s, that's one of those things that just sticks with me as a child of the 70s, as this thing growing up, was the knowledge of the rodeo clowns, which is, of course, this very disrespected profession, but that is central to it at one point, you know. David
even Jake says to him, he goes, "You save lives every day," you know?
Yeah, exactly, because he is a rodeo clown. He keeps the bulls from trampling people, and he does actually get to save his brother later on when we get to that scene. But you know, but of course, because you have to put on the makeup and wear the silly costume, you know, people disrespect you, and it is a position that gets disrespected. And of course, if you're the rodeo clown and your brother, you know, it's like this. He grew up in a rodeo family. His elder brother was, of course, the rodeo star. Younger brother never had the skill for it, you know, and it's one of these things where, you know, maybe had he not grown up in a rodeo family, Had he grown up in, I'm not sure what family, let's say, chartered accountancy, Leon might have been the superstar,
Right.
But that was not the family he grew up in, and so he is the rodeo clown. I mean, they don't imply that Leon is particularly good at chartered accountancy, but I'm throwing it out there.
The guy a break.
Yeah, I'm giving the guy the break that if he was in a completely different world, his outcome might have been completely different. And the same, of course, then would follow with Jake. I mean, that's the thing. It's like if he wasn't in that world where being good at riding a horse and throwing a rope was useful.
I don't know though. I don't know. There seems to be something at the heart of each's character. Not the character they're playing, but the character of their decision making and choices. Jake seems disciplined and knows what he has to do and knows he has to get things done. Leon, on the other hand, is always sort of he's not the guy that believes in himself or believes he can get anything done, so he just goes with the flow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a very real thing. Of course, that is your basic nature nurture question. Did Jake become confident in his decisions because his decisions were right in the world he grew up in, and Leon countermanded that his decisions always proved wrong, and so he lost faith in himself?
Right.
Or were they just by their nature men of action versus men of passivity?
I think it's. I mean, you're equally responsible for it as much as anything else. As you grow, each person sort of collects things that they do or that they learn to do, or how they learn to make decisions. And that's. I think that really is sort of the difference between the two of them.
Yeah, and without a doubt that is how they are defined here. How they got here is a question for debate for millennia without ever achieving a reasonable outcome. But here they are, and essentially what we have is this real bad situation where Leon owes Marvin, Tibby, and Buford money, and they say
he's got to continue helping them with their whatever their scheme is.
Yeah, they're cattle rustling.
Mm.
And they make the point, they don't like Leon even, but his because he's got the cattle car.
Right.
When they rustle the cattle, they can put it in the car and drive it off. Cattle rustling is, believe it or not, is actually still a big, lucrative criminal business out there in the world.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, every so often NPR will do a story. Yeah, cattle rustlers. That's still a thing.
How much do you get for like a cow?
Oh, cows are real expensive. A good cow can run you several grand.
Wow.
Oh yeah, cows as much as a car, if not, so as much as you have an auto theft business out there, criminal enterprise out there, there's a cow theft criminal business out there,
Grand Theft Bovine.
Exactly. Oh, there you go. That is your Rockstar Games next thing. Grand Theft Bovine, cattle rustlers, set it in the old West, just a lot of guns and shooting, or even set it in 1979.
Yeah,
and then you have to unlock the Hulk code. That's the trick. Okay, so getting back to the actual story. And so that's our basic thing. And David, of course, as David is wont to do, stumbles across this dark family secret. And to David's credit, David is like, yeah, I don't want to be in the middle of this stuff. Okay, you deal with it. I'm good. No, I'm not going to tell you your secrets. But then no one believes him, If he knows, he's trouble, so let's go beat him up,
Yeah.
Because
just scare him a little.
Yeah, well, as we say, this is the Hulkiverse, and have you tried killing them yet, or at least have you tried roughing them up at least, know? No one ever wants to just let things go, because that's one of those great things. Like, had they just let things go, things would have been let go. It's like he wasn't going to tell anyone, and eventually, everything would have resolved itself. But because the villains are villains, They essentially hoisted themselves by their own petard, and that petard hoisting was quite wonderful when they do confront David Banner
Oh, it's the best.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Although it gives you, again, one of these great moments of how do they not realize that David turned into the Hulk?
Yeah. They come to him later and they're like, hey, not so tough without your buddy, your big green buddy. And I was like, wait, really? You really didn't? Like, he was tied to those ropes behind those horses.
Yes.
And then, it's amazing. It's so fun.
Yeah. Well, I do have a theory, which is that essentially what it is that most people cannot comprehend the idea of the metamorphosis. That transformation from David to the Hulk.
Right.
So when the Hulk shows up, people just have to assume it's someone else.
Right.
Because the idea of metamorphosis, and then the re-metamorphosis back to David.
Yeah.
And of course, let's be honest here. There is a whole laws of thermodynamics thing that suggests this should not be possible. I'm not sure how well versed these guys were on the basic Newtonian physics of it, but or Aristotelian physics. Actually, yeah, conservation of matter. I don't know if that goes to. I'm not quite sure who first codified that idea. But the fact of the matter is that it does fly in the face of anything you would assume, and so it goes into this idea of magic. Now, what's interesting is that, generally speaking, people do believe in magic. We believe in ghosts. We believe in goblins. People believe in bad luck of all sorts. But to actually be confronted by a giant hulking green monster, once you face it, maybe your mind can't. It's like this: when a ghost is a thought in the back of your head, it's easy to deal with. When a ghost jumps out in front of you, you immediately have to say, well, that's not what that was. That was just, he's got a big green friend who hangs out, and that's who helped him out,
I can buy that.
Yeah. But, of course, you get, and for what it's worth, and again, like I say, we want to say that you were just roughing him off, but really, they drug him behind horses and through a river. There was a real good chance David was going to die in that scene, you know? I mean, this is not stuff you do to intimidate someone. This is like waterboarding without the professionalism.
Right.
So, but then the Hulk comes up, and of course, then the Hulk, turns the tables on them and drags them through the water.
And I love that in this episode, all of a sudden, we get, like, Benny Hill music when the Hulk is pulling the two goons through the water.
Oh, yeah. Well, because it's...
They knew what they were doing. They know who they are. And I love it that they take a moment to have some fun.
Yeah, well, I mean... the Hulk and Benny Hill had a lot of extra crossovers over the years. So, if you ever watched Benny Hill, he actually, I think Benny Hill really liked the Hulk because there's like two or three.
Was he actually on the show?
No. But Benny Hill liked to do Hulk jokes.
Ah.
So, like for example, the existence of the She-Hulk in Marvel Comics is expressly because Benny Hill did a bit where a woman hulked out. And became
no way.
No, yes, and I guess Stan Lee saw that and said, "Oh man, we've got to get our name on this thing and make sure that no one else does a She-Hulk while we're not looking, Wow. But yeah, and that's because of Benny Hill. Benny Hill, and then but Benny Hill had done other bits with the Hulk before, and because it does by its nature feed into a very burlesque quality. This idea of this big green giant showing up out of nowhere.
That's true.
And for what it's worth, always hoisting people by their own petards, It speaks to comedy, you pick on the little guy until the little guy becomes the big guy, and now now who's getting the atomic wedgie,
Yeah, totally right.
So after the whole dragging behind the horses scene and everything else, we do Maggie, the wonderful Sandra Kearns, comes to David. Well, I mean, you get some other stuff that goes on in here. I'm not quite sure of the exact order of operations here. We do get Jack McGee showing up. I'm not sure if that happens before or after the scene. We have some nice confrontations between the two brothers. But Sandra Carnes comes to David and basically has found Jake's medical files. Because he actually did go to a doctor. Because everyone's saying you need to go to a doctor. And he said, I don't need no doctor. I don't need no doctor. And as it turns out, he had actually gone to a doctor and gotten bad news and decided to ignore it. And, of course, Maggie comes to David and says, can you translate this for me? And, of course, at first I'm thinking, what, is it in Spanish? And no, it was actually just medical files.
Yeah, and how does she know he speaks Spanish?
Yes, but that might have come, but it wasn't in Spanish. It was actually just jargon, just medical jargon, and it was something that he was able to realize that you got. I think they said it was Addison's disease. That the stress could kill him. And he's like, but And Jake's basic view was, a lot of things could kill me. I'm riding a bull that could very easily kill me, and I need to do this because I need to fix the problems. Now, truth be told, if his brother has a horrible gambling problem, paying off his debts isn't going to fix it because his debts have been paid off before. But we won't dig too deep on that. What also happens, and like I said, this is one of the things that really makes this episode for me, is Jack Colvin shows up as Jack McGee, and of course we get this really great set of near misses. You get a great David Banner, Jack McGee near miss. As David goes left and the horse comes through and Jack goes right, but Jack McGee goes to the rodeo owner and basically says, look, I'm looking for this man, because he knows he's looking for David, but he doesn't know what to call him or how to present him, but he makes this point that he's a drifter, he's probably looking for a place he can be where he can feel welcome and accepted, without any of these things. Now, of course, to his credit, the rodeo owner says, dude, you just described half the guys who work here.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that Jack has put they're showing that Jack is doing this reporting work, that he is putting the blocks together, building out his whole case. So I really like that. That's about all we get from him in this episode. But he's still there, and he does show up when the Hulk shows up again. But for that, it's minor. Yeah. And of course, just before this, so this definitely happened. So the Maggie scene definitely happened before this scene, because just before that, David is going to the owner trying to get him to cancel, have Jake pull out of the rodeo, and he's like, "Look, I can't, because he's real close to winning. If I pull him out, he can sue me." Yeah. And quite frankly, he did sign a release saying, we don't have the liability if he up and dies on us, And, I feel for you, but, I can't expose myself to this. And really, not for nothing, Jake doesn't want to, Right. It's like that. I can't force Jake to do this, because if I do that, I'm taking away his rights in this. Yeah. And my hands are tied. Man
has a right to his choices.
Yeah, well, he does. And if he
especially a man like Jake.
Yeah, and you know what? For what it's worth, you do wonder for a moment there if there is this. That wrestler quality. Have you saw the film Wrestler? Yeah,
very much so.
And
very much so.
He wants, if he's gonna die, he'd rather die in the ring.
Although with a bit more dignity here than it was in the Wrestler. That was another level of darkness.
Yeah, well, that was not a 1979 primetime TV show.
Fair.
Despite the addition of what's her name? Marissa Tomei. It was that was a very dark take on it. Although at the same time, you do want, honestly, well, not to get into the Wrestler here, but you really look at the Wrestler and you just think, how awful that was for everyone else.
Mm.
You know, when someone commits suicide like that, essentially.
Yeah.
And then, you know, this like guy, you know, the Iron Sheik pastiche that he's fighting there, you know. You know, the Iron Sheik, you know, that's you know, he's actually, you know, I don't know him personally, but you know, I know of him. He was actually a real nice, jovial guy. He owned a car dealership in Michigan. He was a real great guy, and you know, jovial, had, you know, a loving family, and here he's coming into this to do this thing, and then, you know, you have the other guy die on him, and that's gotta haunt you, you know. So it's like real jerk move there, wrestler. Real jerk move. But that's not what Jake's trying to do. Jake's just trying to help everything out, and we do get so he does his last round, the bronc breaking, and he rides the bronc, and they say, and he's made the time. He has won this, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, at the same time, of course, because you know, even though still hasn't told anyone about the cattle wrestling thing.
Yeah.
After you tried to murder him the first time, we're gonna try and murder you one more time. See if it works this time. And of course, they throw him into a bullpen with some rather odd-looking puppet bull hooves. I do think that you had two hooves coming up on the same side at one point, but yeah, you know. But it was a scene. It worked. It worked for it. And of course, you know, this is enough to cause him to become angry and outraged, which leads to another Hulk. And but of course, just before the Hulk comes into it, Jake falls. He has his attack, which means Leon has to run in to be the clown to save his life. And then, of course, you know, at that point, that's when the Hulk comes out. It deals with the bull, takes Jake over to Maggie, and then runs off.
And this was great because you actually get to see him like interacting with the bull, which is cool because a lot of times, I mean, you know, it's the 70s, technology wasn't so good, so you know, you get implied action a lot of times in some of these big scenes. But here I was like, oh, the bull's charging at him and I'm getting excited. You see like this little neck thing shaking and it's just so exciting. And then he gets up and he actually wrestles the bull down and he grabs him by the horn. I thought that was a really cool bull scene.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, it was a great moment for Lou and a great moment for the bull too. So I think everyone definitely earned their pay that day. And fortunately, Lou Ferrigno did not get trampled by a bull. So,
yeah.
All in all, that all worked out great. And you know, and then of course we get a nice voiceover with, yes, we have the money, we solved the problems. Leon actually before the voiceover says, you know, look, I'm gonna go that Leon's gonna go to the cops. He's gonna pull the rustler. He's gonna say, look, these are the guys who are pulling the rustling, and you know. And I'm just, you know, I want to be honest with you. And so, you know, we don't know if Leon's going to do some jail time for that. But we know that when he gets out, his brother's going to have his trucking company up and running with Maggie. Yeah. And so if he can learn to drive a truck, which we already knows how to drive a truck, so he's good. Right. He's going to have a place to be. Right. So yay for the White family. And then harmonica Lonely Man theme.
Yeah, there's a sweet moment right at the end I thought that I really dug, and that spoke to, like, you know, why the episode was good, because the acting was so good and the relationships between the characters were so strong. You know, where he takes him to the side and he tells him, if you weren't my brother, I'd want you as a friend.
Yeah. Well, I believe they said that earlier too, you know.
Yeah, and he, like, you know, and Banner tells him, he goes, have you ever tried saying that to him? Yeah. And he's just like, there's certain things just men shouldn't have to say. And then by the end, he's like, man, I almost died. This is crazy. Might as well just be honest with him. We're having a moment. I thought that was really, really cool that it brought and tied that in at the end.
Well, you know, it is the evolution of the cowboy way, you know. The cowboy way, the taciturn, you know, rock of a man who never admits he has emotions. You know, it fades away, man. This is 1979, baby. And it's time to just say, you know what? To heck with that. I love you. I love my brother. You know?
Yeah.
I love my dead gay son. And to quote Heathers. And you know, it's okay to say it before they're dead. And if you get the chance to not be dead, you should tell someone you love them, if you love them. Because, you know, that's the whole point of not being dead, is you actually get to tell people you love them. So,
Well said.
Exactly. So, any final thought? Any final ideas on the episode, Mozz?
No, that's about it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you know, I enjoyed it too. I'm a little down because I did think it was a little pat, but you know, it's one of these things. You know, here's what I'll tell you. Sometimes with the Hulk, you can watch it with a critical eye, but then you talk about it with that love of the story and the character, and you find so many other things that maybe you didn't. You see more with your heart when you're not watching it than you saw with your eyes while you were.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it definitely reminds me of having some member berries, you know?
Yes. Mozz, if anyone would like to talk to you about anything, or if they just want to hang out with you in New York City as the swinging, cool guy that you are, how could they reach out to you and know you?
They can send me an email at mozzmanzor@gmail.com. That's mozzmanzor@gmail.com. Or find me on Facebook. You can just search my name.
Mozz Manzor. Great. And of course, as always, if you'd like to write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our Mozz and Poz once did, write to me at superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And, of course, you can follow me on Twitter in that newfangled way the kids do, at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for equality. Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having you here in GammaCast. Be sure to check out me and Mozz over at the Nuff Said feed on Southgate Media on the Cage Cast. And check out all the Nuff Said fun stuff that goes on. If you like televised Marvel programming, you'll love the Nuff Said. Okay, thank you for hulking out with us, ladies and gentlemen. Please hulk out with us again. Good night.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.